2026 has started with a lot of controversy for Donald Trump's presidency. He is facing accusations of breaking the law abroad and at home, and a big legal inquiry that has taken up most of our broadcast tonight with that terrible shooting in Minneapolis. Now, I want to turn to lawmakers dialing up pressure on DOJ under Trump for breaking a different law, which is another big story that he might prefer to go away. The DOJ is breaking the Epstein law that Trump signed, the Epstein Transparency Act. They have released a tiny portion of files when they faced the original deadline, which landed in December, exactly 1 month after the humiliating loss that Trump faced when his own party rebuffed him and required him to stop hiding documents and covering up for Epstein for whatever reasons Trump and his policies had done. And now we see lawmakers in both parties saying that it is clear that Trump DOJ is breaking the law, and they're threatening criminal sanctions over that.
Typically, like with contempt, you might refer that to the DOJ, and then the DOJ never prosecutes itself. And then the problem goes away at the end of the Congress because it's contempt because they're not in compliance with the congressional subpoena, which expires at the end of Congress. This law does not expire at the end of Congress, and so they've got a real problem. The contempt that the Congress refers, they could be in jeopardy of that even after this Congress expires.
Massie is speaking in sort of the legal process there, but the bottom line about the real problem he's mentioning is a reference to that soon enough, and mind you, he's a Republican, he's saying they could be out of office and an ensuing administration could actually hold them in contempt and people could get in trouble. Chuck Schumer says Congress wants that list of government officials that's required and asks what they're hiding. There's also the admission from the DOJ that there's 2 million Epstein documents still under review, with 12,000 documents that reach up to over 100,000 pages released. That would actually mean they've only done 1% of the files that they say exist. Lawmakers turning to external pressure. A bipartisan group wants an audit of this process. Democratic senators also trying to put the heat specifically on Trump's chief of staff, seeking more information because she claimed in a recent interview that she's looked over these files that Trump has named but isn't doing anything awful. Trump's DOJ has said this review could take weeks more. This is after they've had 6 weeks, give or take, and claimed they'd done a review and claimed they had 200 lawyers working on this. Any normal law firm dealing with this type of investigation and request would have completed it by now. So what are they hiding?
If this were a private law firm with 5% of the resources of the DOJ, this would have been done by the deadline. The biggest problem isn't that they're missing the deadlines, it's what they're redacting. So they're citing the Privacy Act, and they're trying to pretend like that overrides a law that we just passed that says you can't withhold records to prevent embarrassment.
That's a Republican talking about the Epstein cover-up dragging into the new year. We're joined by former prosecutor Christy Greenberg, an MS Now legal analyst. Your view on the DOJ's compliance here, breaking this law?
Well, I think the biggest issue I see is there's been really poor communication coming from the Department of Justice. We saw a letter on the day that the deadline on December 19th from Todd Blanche to Congress explaining, hey, this is what the process is. We have these NSD lawyers, National Security Division lawyers, who are reviewing this, and this is what we're doing. And he said, we're reviewing privileged information, and we're redacting that, which I don't believe the act calls for any kind of privileged information to be withheld. He's saying we are redacting only what is legally required, but it's not required that they decide that certain information is privileged. That's a choice that the department is making to say that information is privileged and they're going to redact it.
Yeah, but I mean, even before you get to that, Massey's a Republican lawmaker from Kentucky. His view, along with a lot of experts, is they're not releasing enough documents, that when 99% are hidden, something's up.
Well, they're certainly not releasing enough documents. This week, there was a letter that came from the Southern District of New York to the judge in the Maxwell case. And in that letter, they said more than 125 lawyers from my old office, the Southern District of New York, are spending all or a substantial part of their day reviewing Epstein files. In that case, I don't know why we only have 125,000 pages. If you have a majority of the office working
Yeah.
on this, we should be seeing a lot more than
And the
we've seen.
original letter claimed there was 200 lawyers working on it, and other reporting said that they were reviewing this prior to the law being passed. So taken together, it looks like those statements either aren't true or whatever those lawyers are reviewing isn't getting released. And so it seems that their strategy, best I can tell, is to drag this out as long as possible and then wait to see if they really get sued and then go to court, and off we go to a very slow drip.
I think that's right. And I also think that, again, to Massey's point, it's not just the timing, it's what they're doing. If all you were doing was redacting victim information, that is a relatively quick process. You're looking for identifying information. You can go through and do that. You have the list of names. That's pretty straightforward. If what you're doing is saying, but there are all these other privileges that may apply, that then takes a lot more time. And especially if you're looking at internal communications and memos, now you're adding more time to the process. And again, I don't see any reason why they need to hold back that information from the public.
Todd Blanche doesn't have any of this type of high-level experience. He has different experience. Pam Bondi bungled this so much that they've kind of pretended she's not Attorney General. You don't hear from her on this case anymore. Do you think Blanche is in over his head?
I mean, I don't think, again, this seems pretty straightforward. It's, you have a file. They know a lot of these documents. I mean, they don't even seem to know what the documents are. There was 2.7 million pages of discovery that was just produced to Maxwell. That was made public in 2021. So it's very clear they should have known that there were a lot of documents that they needed to review, and those documents are already electronically available. So he knows the process of what you do to redact documents. This is not the hard part. The hard part is actually investigating and prosecuting sex trafficking, not redacting a file that already exists and compiling the documents. So he shouldn't be in over his head. I think they are making this a lot more complicated than it needs to be because they don't want to provide all the information to the American people.
Yeah.